So pleased to introduce you to Renato Bonasera, who joins us to talk about his wonderful book, Into the Cloud of Knowing, here on America Tonight with me, Kate Delaney. So Renato, first of all, it's so interesting. I said to you when we were talking off the air, I mean, I got chills even when I heard the title of your book, because I knew exactly where you were going in this book. And I think now more than ever, there's so much that people are contending with and children are having to contend with in the world. And there is kind of a shroud of disbelief of what happens afterwards. And do we know that God exists? And you really tackle this question, is what I'm going to call it, by the things that happen to you and other people and these encounters and what you put in your book. So writing this book, did you feel compelled that you needed to tell the stories?
Absolutely, Kate. I knew that if my faith was to be authentic and my experiences were to be authentic, that I had to spread them and I had to tell other people. And I guess it's part of my journey as a teacher, because I've been teaching for a long time. And a lot of it was teaching religious education. And kids asked the most deep spiritual questions. And I knew I needed to have an answer for them. And I didn't want to just say, oh, there's mystery and we can't answer anything. So I'm a reflective person. I keep thinking and dwelling on the mystery of things, why evil happens. How do we tackle the question of evil in a world that is full of it when we claim to have a loving God? And I knew I needed to provide as much evidence, if you like, as I could. And I've been fortunate enough, blessed enough to have God be really merciful to me and give me many signs over the years, both, and not just in my life, but in the lives of others. That I've accumulated and written down and taught and passed on. Even as recently as a sessional academic in theology at Notre Dame University, which I've done for a little bit. I do it casually, and adults there who have no faith whatsoever. They're not even Christian at all, or don't even could be atheists. But being able to share that with them has been a really important part of my life.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I love how you said that, accumulated signs. Tell us about, and the book is in 3 parts. And as you said, you've been a teacher, 28 years as a teacher, and you talk about evil, and then obviously good versus evil is a major theme, as we know, yes, in theology and in belief and disbelief. So tell us about some of the accumulated signs in your life.
Well, I guess I like I said, I had my own conversion experience, and mine was very tangible. It was very sensible, and I've been graced with that. God obviously knew that I couldn't just have a blind faith. I needed to have some reason to believe. So it was very sensible for me. Like I could really sense it. I felt joy, a bit like C.S. Lewis describes the joy that he felt when he was converted and how he was looking for this joy. So I felt joy, and then I had deep experiences of closeness to God before the struggles came. Both struggles and good experiences led me to being part of a deliverance ministry for a while I was contemplating a religious life and working with a priest who was conducting deliverances here in Perth. And I got to be present as a prayer helper, if you like. And there were some pretty shocking experiences there that made the whole thing a reality to me. Like at first it was just a theological concept I would read about, people like Gabriel Amorth, who's an exorcist. And I thought, well, that's interesting. This is really cool, in that sort of strange way. But then to experience it myself and to see it happening, even though I wasn't the direct, conduit for the experience, was pretty amazing in a mystical way. And then to have my own cousin being delivered, and I was a catalyst for bringing the priest to her house, and then experiencing what I experienced in my own home as a result of that, convinced me more and more that God was real, and that there are reasons why people get into this trouble in the first place, including clairvoyance and other things, Ouija boards and so on. There are a lot of kids today who don't have a clue about any of this. And so first and foremost, I wanted my own children to be able to give a response to all the pressures in this life that we have that lead us away from God, and also to be able to see and hear God's presence and voice in our lives, in the journey that we lead, whether it be evil experiences or good.
Oh, I like how you said that, evil or good experiences. And I mentioned, the book is in 3 parts. And why did you do that? When you went to tackle this and put this together, how'd you put the book together? Tell us more about that.
Sure. I decided to look at the question of theodicy, which is how to reconcile evil and in the world with a loving God. I thought I'd do that first, because for people to be credible, it's really easy to talk about faith experiences and make it all lovey-dovey. And I know life's not like that. We experience a lot of suffering. There's a lot of trauma. I mean, I work in special needs now, and the trauma, I never heard of trauma-informed practice until a couple of years ago in all my years of teaching. And now it's everywhere. There's so much trauma. Kids are traumatized by family breakdowns, by abuse, or even their disability. So having experienced all that, I knew that we had to tackle it to be authentic. We had to tackle the question of evil first. So I do tackle that. I tackle the question of the genocide in Rwanda. I tackle the death of innocent children, especially a beautiful young girl at the age of 9 called Sophia Rodriguez, who here in Perth was murdered, I think around 2007, and whose family I got to know personally after the event, and how there could be signs of goodness even in that evil. And talking about it with my own students who actually knew her brother. Like, it was just amazing, all the coincidences, all the people that God has brought into my life, whether it be someone who's been held up by child soldiers in Zambia, who then miraculously escapes that because the soldier just happens to used to be an altar server for the priest that this guy mentioned randomly. So they got him out of that, or being shot, or going to Rwanda and seeing dead corpses there. Now, how do we explain all this? How do we look at our faith authentically if we don't tackle this first? So I do that in the first part of my book. And then the second one, I then feel like my stories are credible enough for people to then accept the beautiful stories that follow that, like the miracles and wonders that I've experienced and that others have experienced, like healing ministry. And these are people that I know. They're not just made up. Like, I've spoken with these people, I've interviewed them, and they're authentic, and I trust their story, and they've been repeated many times. And then the final part of the story, once people get to know that I do tackle this seriously, I then look at my own children, and I look at my own story a little bit more in depth, and especially the death of my mother. And that is, and as I said to you before, that if nothing else, that is the most solid reason for me to believe and never to doubt the existence of a loving God. So then by then, hopefully people can see that death, which is the most basic thing that we all experience as a crisis in our lives, the death of a loved one. Hopefully that will speak to people too, and help them to see that there is more that can be seen with our eyes, if we have the grace and opportunity to experience that.
I like how you said that, the grace and opportunity to experience that. So that's also got to be part of writing the book. Obviously, legacy for your children, your story, the stories of other people, talking about miracles and the wonders and the wonderful things that have happened. And do you think when it's easier when you experience that to believe, isn't it, than evil?
Absolutely. And like in the death of my mother, I'm just so blessed to have God be, like I said, so merciful that he enabled me to see even blessing there in that evil, which was very personal. I mean, obviously we get affected by the evil outside of us and outside of our families. And I tackle some of these in the book as well, like the Sandy Hook massacre and the Columbine massacre and so on. But when it hits home, like it's the person that was the center of your life, and this was before I married, the center of my life, whom I helped as much as I could. And she relied on me. She suffered depression. She suffered a lot of things. Then to die from a heart attack suddenly in the arms of her friend, at least she had that, before I could say goodbye, before I could comfort her. That was the worst experience I could have had. And it was the most important to that point. So to then have, someone the day before she dies tell me cryptically at school, because the secretary, she was a charismatic Christian. And she says, you've got to read, I had a dream about you last night. And in the dream, an Italian lady, specifically an Italian lady, and of course my parents were Italian, said, you need to read Isaiah 40 from the Bible. And knowing that this friend was charismatic and that she had these prophetic dreams from time to time, I took a look, but didn't get it. But then 5 days later, the penny drops when I read Isaiah 40 after having sung for my mother a specific song about hope and the resurrection of the dead, and asking all these questions and going through all these doubts. And when that song ends up being the direct answer of everything that I had asked, and was actually the exact location from which the songwriter took all the lyrics for the song that I sang, then I knew that God was really merciful. And he was answering every single question I had about that she was safe, that she'd been forgiven, that I should never have doubted in the first place, because look up and see who made the stars.
Oh, I like that. Look up and see who made the stars. You can get the book, by the way, Into the Cloud of Knowing on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's also ebook form or hardback form, paperback form, rather. Perfect place to end this. Renato, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, thank you so much, Kate. This has been really a wonderful privilege. Thank you.
More than just trying to make it through the day. More to this life.